Hello, my name is Kaintan Mononye, and in this video we are going to discuss Entity Framework with MVC. We are going to take the code first approach. This will not be a complete explanation of all these terms. It's actually a demo. I'm going to take you through the steps in Visual Studio to implement Entity Framework with MVC code first approach, but it will be okay to have a quick definition of what this thing is all about. So Entity Framework is an ORM framework. An ORM stands for Object Relational Mapping, and it allows you to generate database tables from your classes written in OOP language, Object-Oriented Programming Language, for instance C#. So if you create your class on C#, can allow Entity Framework to generate your database tables for you. So gone are the days when you build a database, you build stored procedures, then you go back to the code to start writing the classes and try to map them. No, Entity Framework is going to do that automatically for you. Code first approach is one of the three approaches when Entity Framework is used. We have the model first approach, we have the database first approach, we have the code first approach. In code first, you write the code of the classes. For me, I'm going to use C# for this demo, and then we'll see the magic Entity Framework uses to generate this table on the fly for you. MVC stands for Model View Controller. It's an architecture that I'm going to discuss in another video. So what are the steps we are going to take in this demo? Let me end this slide, and then we are going to follow this demo step by step. Each step we update the list of steps, and at the end we'll have a complete list of steps to follow. So try to be involved, try to follow along. If necessary, you can pause this video and rewind. So step 1, open Visual Studio. I'm using Visual Studio 2013. Good. So I'll start a new project. So this new project, I want to call it relative. Let me say EF. Okay, let's call it EF relative. EF CF. EF CF means EF code first, and I'm calling it relative. I want to put a list of relatives. Okay, EF relative. Okay, let's leave it that way. So choose on the template, go to web, and then go to ASP.NET Web Application, and then go ahead to say OK, and then in the sub template here, just go ahead to select MVC. OK. So step 1 is done. Step 1 is done. So we've created a new project in Visual Studio. Alright, so allow it to build up the project. Okay, so now this is our project. We can go ahead to okay, fine. If you go ahead to run it, that'll be fine. Let's just see. Okay, I'm running in Google Chrome, and this is how it is. It's just like a master page based application, and so wait for a couple of seconds, and then we have it. Okay, here we have the links, here we have the content. So let's go ahead to, because we say we want to create a list of people, a list of persons who are my relatives. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add a model. A model is just the class, a class. Say class. Okay, so I'll call it relative. It will represent the class that we are going to work with. So relative is the name of the class, and so I'll just go ahead to I'll decorate it with some properties. Prop, tap int ID, fine. So prop, tap string, first name, okay. So string last name, gets set, okay, that's fine. Public, let me just put another one, public string city gets set, okay. And finally, number of kids will be an integer value. Public, can I use prop, tap okay, it should be int, okay, and it's going to be kids. Alright, so this is my model, so it's simply a class. So I'll go ahead to save it. So it means we are going to add step 2. If possible, just follow along, it's no big deal. Add a model, which is a class, to the application in the model. Is it models or model? Is a folder, okay, in the models folder. Okay, so that is it. So the next thing I'm going to do is to add a context. A context is like the data store. The context serves like a connection to the database to get data from the database or to talk to the database. So I'm going to right click and add a folder. A folder. I'm going to call it context. Okay, so inside this folder I'm going to add a new item. I'll call it relative context, because it's good to name your context prefix with the name of your class. So relative context, anytime you create a context, allow it to inherit from DB context. Meanwhile, this DB context is defined in a different namespace, so you just right click and resolve and allow it to import the namespace that has it. Alright, so you now define a database object in public DB sets. That is the syntax. And relative be set relative, okay, relatives, get set. So here I also right click because the model class is not added to the namespace, so just allow it to import. So this is my context. So create a context folder and add a context class. Alright, so now I've defined my context. So the next thing I'm going to do is to create a database in the app data folder. So right click and then add a new item, and it's going to be a local database. So this database, I'm going to call it relative DB. Relative means my relative, my siblings, uncles, and aunties. So okay, so that is takes some seconds to add. Okay, so it's added to our application. So if you go ahead to open it, you find out that there is nothing inside. That is fine, no tables, no views, nothing. we'll see how Entity Framework is going to generate the tables for us. So let me go ahead to update the list of steps. Add a database item to the app data folder. Okay, so I've done that. Then the next thing I'm going to do is to define my connection string. So connection string is defined in the web.config file, and normally the name under this connection string /connection string, the name of your connection string should be the name of your context. So just copy the name of the context and replace this name default connection with the name of the context. And now the file name .mdf, the database file name should be relative.mdf. So whatever is in the database name, see this blah 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 .mdf, you remove and put the name of the database you created, relative.db.mdf. We don't need initial catalog, so just go ahead to remove the initial catalog. Remove the initial catalog. Integrated security is okay. So go ahead to save. Modify your connection string in the web.config to reflect the context name and the database name. Alright, so having done this, let's go ahead to do something else. Okay, so close. The next thing I'm going to do now is to add a controller. We've created a model, now we are going to add a controller, and later we are going to add a view, right? So that is how it works. It's model view controller, or model view controller view, anyone, but when you are creating, you start from the model to the controller. So in the controllers folder here, if you look right inside, you see some controllers. We are not interested in that, so just add a new controller. It's very easy. Just take an empty controller and then add. It's good to name the class as a prefix to the controller name, so I'll call it relative controller. Alright, scaffolding or generating required items. So in this controller file, meanwhile, let's update the list of steps. Add a controller in the controllers folder of your project. Okay, let me make some room so that we'll be able to add more steps. This we've done. So in this controller, we want to get no controller serves as something in between the model and the view. So this controller is going to grab everything in the database and display on the view. So it gets from the model and displays on the view. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create an instance of the database, the data context. You just go ahead to create an instance. So say relative context. Okay, let's call it context is equal to new relative context. So it's going to complain, so just right click and resolve by adding the namespace, and that is it. So we want to now, from this context, we want to get all the items, the list of relatives. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say var relatives is equal to context dot relatives dot to list. Okay, var is a dynamic variable or keyword, so it's same as saying list relative. Okay, so it's the same as saying list relative. No, not relative context. Resolve this, resolve to add this. So equal to context blah blah blah. So this relative so it's all the same, so either way. So let me use, I think I'm going to use the one that is easy. Context dot relatives dot to the list Okay, so these relatives will be populated with the items and the relatives table. So now it's returning view. So this view that is going to be returned, I'll hand it the relatives, right? So it looks like it's difficult, but this is just a simple step. So I've completed the my controller now adds code on to the controller to get list of relatives. Alright, so that I've done, and the final step, I built my model, I built my controller, and the next thing I'm going to build now is my view. So right click, take note this action result. Inside you right click and say add view. Alright, wait, before you add a view, try to make sure you rebuild your project, and that is fine. So right click and add view, and just say the template is going to be a list, the model is going to be relative model, and the context class is relative context. The layout we are going to use is more like a master page, and is inside shared layout, the CS HTML, and that is fine. So scaffolding is generating the required files. So this is my view. So let's go ahead to update, add a view. Okay, so I think that's all. So if we go ahead to run this application, we are likely, just take note what is going to happen as we run this application. So if everything goes well, it's going to be good. So this is it. So this is the list. For now there is nothing inside, but what I want you to take note of is that the database has been generated for us from our class. So if we go ahead to look at this database, the tables has been generated for us. So if you look at this relatives, you see it's relatives table. This wasn't there before, it was generated by entity data model. Alright, so now I just want to show you something. For now there is nothing inside the tables. Running a second time. Alright. Okay, don't know, but maybe I'll just stop and run a second time. Alright, so if I run a second time, what's happening? Okay, restart. Okay, fine. So now it's empty, and I would like to click on create, because there is this create button, create new, so it's not there. So let's go ahead to add an item. This I'm not going to put as part of the steps, because I think I'll explain this in another video. So I'm going to add another action results create. So this particular one is going to display a blank form to create. So this one, why? Okay, not returning a value. It will be HTTP get. Okay, so because it's just going to display a blank form, return view. Okay, but the view is going to return. I'm going to just give it a blank model, new relative. Okay, so very much a blank view. Alright, so the next crate I'm going to build will return the list, will save the items that have been entered in the database. So maybe we'll run it to see. For now, I'm going to add a view, but this time, as you can see, create. So create. So they should be relative. Okay, and that's fine. So if we allow it, so we'll click on create as we run this and see how it displays a blank form. But it's likely when we try to let's restart this project. Okay, so no, I want to display the relatives first, and then I'll click on the create button. So let's wait for a couple of seconds and let's click on create. Good, so it creates. So now if I add items, okay, and 0 kids, create, nothing. So nothing happens. So we need to add a post method to a HTTP post method to help us save this item. Okay, so we add HTTP post method, so public action results create. Alright, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to check the model state if it's valid. If model state dot is valid, okay, is valid. Okay, so no. Alright, so if, hold on, I think I'm having some problems here. Great. Alright, so at this point, if okay, okay, so Okay, maybe we stop here for now, and later I'm going to discuss this. For now, I'm sure you can follow all these steps. I hope this video has been informative for you. My name remains Kainson Monoye. Maybe you leave some comments in the comment box. Maybe you just check again in a few days time for my next video. I'd like to thank you once again for viewing.